I'm embarrassed to tell such an intimate story, but I feel I need to share it to clear my conscience. I'm 42 years old and have been married to Jack for 15 years. I always thought we had a solid marriage. Until, well, let me tell you from the beginning. Jack has always been a hard worker. When we got married, his dedication was one of the things I admired most about him. I thought that over time, we would achieve a better balance between his work and our life together. But things didn't turn out as I expected. Over the years his workdays became longer and longer. He would come home late, tired, with barely enough energy to eat dinner and go to sleep. He spent weekends recovering from the exhaustion accumulated during the week. At first, I tried to be understanding. I told myself it was a phase, that things would soon improve. But months turned into years, and the situation remained the same. I felt increasingly lonely, like a stranger in my own home. I tried to talk to Jack about it several times, but we always ended up arguing. He said he was doing it for us, to give us a good life. I replied that I preferred having fewer material things and more time together. But nothing changed. It was during this time that Tyler, my sister's son, started visiting us more frequently. Tyler is 28, a cheerful and energetic guy. At first, his visits were sporadic, but gradually they became more regular. He would come with the excuse of helping me with some household chores, or simply to keep me company. I remember the first time I realized something was changing between us. We were in the kitchen, preparing dinner. I was chopping vegetables, and Tyler was telling me a funny anecdote from work. Suddenly, I cut my finger with the knife. It wasn't serious, but Tyler reacted as if I had cut off my arm. He quickly approached, took my hand in his, and examined the wound with a concern that seemed excessive to me. Our eyes met, and, for a moment, I felt a connection that went beyond simple family affection. I tried to ignore that feeling, to convince myself that I was imagining things. But from that day on, I started noticing small details. The way Tyler looked at me when he thought I wasn't noticing. How he would find any excuse to be near me, to brush my hand or arm as if by accident. And the worst part is that I started looking for those moments too. Our relationship evolved slowly. The conversations became deeper, more intimate. Tyler listened to me in a way that Jack hadn't in years. He made me feel valued, understood. And little by little, without realizing it, I fell in love with him. The first time we kissed was on a Sunday afternoon. Jack had gone out to play golf with some clients, and Tyler came over with the excuse of helping me fix a bookshelf. We were in the living room, laughing about something silly, when suddenly there was silence. We looked at each other and, without saying a word, we moved closer to each other. The kiss was soft at first, almost shy, but it quickly became passionate, urgent. When we separated, we were both breathless and scared by what had just happened. That kiss opened the door to a clandestine relationship that lasted for months. We would see each other whenever we could, taking advantage of any moment when Jack wasn't home. The adrenaline of the forbidden, mixed with guilt and fear of being discovered, created an explosive mix of emotions. I remember one afternoon in particular. Jack had called to say he would be late, as usual. Tyler came over, and we spent hours making love in our marital bed. It was passionate, intense. But when we finished, I was overwhelmed by such a strong feeling of guilt that I started crying. Tyler hugged me, trying to console me. But I could see in his eyes that he felt bad about what we were doing too. As time passed, the situation became increasingly unsustainable. The guilt was eating me up inside. Every time Jack kissed me or hugged me, I felt as if they were stabbing me in the heart. Tyler was suffering too. I could see it in his eyes, in the way his smile had become sad and forced. We tried to end the relationship several times, but we always fell back into it. It was like an addiction. We knew it was destroying us, but we couldn't stop. Until one night, everything exploded in the most unexpected way. It was a Friday night. Jack had called to say he had a business dinner and would be home late. Tyler came over, and like so many other times, we ended up in the bedroom. We were so absorbed in each other that we didn't hear the knocks on the front door. Suddenly we heard voices in the hallway, and before we could react, the bedroom door burst open. There, in the doorway, were two police officers. A man and a woman, both with expressions of surprise that quickly turned to discomfort. Tyler and I were paralyzed, naked under the sheets, unable to utter a word. "Ma'am, are you all right?" asked the female officer, her hand instinctively on her weapon. It took me a few seconds to react. Yes, I'm fine," I managed to stammer. What's going on?" The male officer cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "We received a call from one of your neighbors. They reported strange noises and suspicious movements in the house. They thought it might be a robbery or something worse." The shame I felt at that moment is indescribable. I wanted the earth to swallow me up. Tyler was as pale as a ghost, not daring to look at the officers. "Everything's fine, officers," I said, trying to sound calm. "There's been a misunderstanding." The officers exchanged a look. It was evident that they had realized the situation. "May I ask who the gentleman is?" asked the female officer, pointing at Tyler. I felt as if I had been doused with cold water. What could I say? The truth? Lie? Any answer seemed equally terrible. He's my nephew," I finally responded, feeling each word burn my throat. The officer's eyes widened even more. The situation, already uncomfortable, had just become 1,000 times worse. "Mom," said the male officer, in a tone that mixed professionalism and disgust. "I understand this is a delicate situation, but I must ask you both to get dressed and accompany us to the station to clarify this matter." Tyler finally found his voice. "Please, officers, this is a misunderstanding. Nothing illegal has happened here." The officers exchanged looks again. "Even so," said the female officer, "we need to take your statements. We'll give you a few minutes to get dressed. We'll wait for you in the living room." With that, they left the room, closing the door behind them. Tyler and I looked at each other, panic reflected in our eyes. "What are we going to do?" Tyler whispered, his voice trembling. I had no answer. My mind was a whirlwind of chaotic thoughts. How had we come to this? What would happen now? Would Jack find out? My family? Shame and fear paralyzed me. We got dressed in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. When we left the room, the officers were waiting for us in the living room, their expressions serious and impassive. The trip to the police station was the longest of my life. Sitting in the back seat of the patrol car, with Tyler beside me, I felt like my whole world was crumbling. The officers tried to ask some questions during the trip, but I could barely respond with monosyllables. At the station, they separated us to take our statements. I spent hours answering questions, explaining over and over again the nature of my relationship with Tyler, assuring them that everything had been consensual, that there had been no coercion or abuse of any kind. I felt like a criminal, although technically I hadn't committed any crime. When they finally let us go, it was already dawn. Tyler and I left the station without looking at each other, without speaking. The shame and guilt were too great. "I'll take you home," Tyler muttered when we got to his car. The ride back was silent. When we arrived at my house, Tyler turned off the engine, but neither of us made any move to get out. "Sarah," Tyler started, but I interrupted him. "No," I said, my voice broken. "Don't say anything. This has to end." Tyler nodded slowly. "I know," he said softly. "I'm so sorry, Sarah, for everything." I got out of the car without saying another word. I entered the house, closed the door, and collapsed right there on the floor of the entryway, crying like I had never cried before in my life. The following weeks were a nightmare. I lived in constant fear that Jack would find out, that the neighbors would start talking, that my family would discover what I had done. Every time the phone rang, every time someone knocked on the door, I felt my heart stop. Jack noticed something was wrong, of course. How could he not? I was distant, nervous, startling at anything. When he asked me what was wrong, I told him it was stress from work, that I wasn't feeling well, any excuse I could think of. Tyler stopped coming over naturally. When Jack asked about him, I said he was very busy with his new job. The lie hurt. But what else could I do? Months passed before I could sleep a whole night without waking up startled, in a cold sweat, convinced that Jack knew everything and was about to throw me out of the house. Little by little, the constant anxiety gave way to deep depression. I realized that I had not only betrayed Jack, but also myself. I had thrown away years of marriage, risked my reputation and my relationship with my family, all for an affair that should never have happened. I thought many times about confessing everything to Jack. I even wrote several letters explaining what had happened, but I never had the courage to give them to him. How could I destroy his world like that? How could I hurt him so much? One day, several months after the incident with the police, Jack came home early. I was surprised to see him walk through the door in the middle of the afternoon, something that hadn't happened in years. "Sarah," he said to me, his voice serious. "We need to talk." I felt the ground open up beneath my feet. This was the moment I had feared so much. Somehow he had found out. Everything was going to end. We sat on the living room couch. Jack looked me in the eyes and took my hands in his. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began. "I've realized that I've been so absorbed in my work that I've neglected the most important thing in my life." It wasn't what I expected to hear. I was left speechless, unable to process what was happening. "I've seen you sad, distant," Jack continued. "At first, I thought it was just a phase, but I've realized that the problem is me. I've been so busy trying to give us a good life that I've forgotten to live that life with you." Tears started running down my cheeks. Jack gently wiped them away with his fingers. "I've asked for a reduction in my work hours," he said. "I want to spend more time with you, Sarah. I want to make up for lost time. If you want to, of course." At that moment, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. It wasn't relief at not being discovered. It was something deeper. It was the realization that, despite everything, there was still a chance for us. "Yes," I said through tears. "Yes, I want to." We hugged and stayed that way for what seemed like an eternity. In that embrace was everything. The forgiveness I needed, but that Jack didn't know he had to give. The promise of a new beginning. The hope for a better future. 2 years have passed since that day. Jack kept his promise. He spends more time at home. We go out together, we travel. We have rediscovered the love that united us at the beginning. It hasn't been easy. The guilt for what I did is still there. A constant reminder of how close I came to losing everything. Tyler moved to another city shortly after that night at the police station. We see each other at family gatherings, but our relationship is now distant and formal. Sometimes, when our eyes meet, I can see in his eyes the same regret that I feel. But I also see relief. Relief that that madness ended before it completely destroyed our lives. I've learned a lot from this experience. I've learned about the value of honesty, about the importance of communication in a relationship. I've learned that love is not just a feeling, but a decision that is made every day. And above all, I've learned to forgive myself. I don't justify what I did. It was a mistake, a betrayal of my marriage and my own values. But I understand now that this mistake doesn't define me. What defines me are the decisions I make every day to be a better person, a better wife. Jack never found out about my affair with Tyler. And sometimes I wonder if I should tell him. But every time I think about it, I come to the same conclusion. Nothing would be gained by it. It would only cause unnecessary pain. My punishment is to live with the guilt. And my redemption is to work every day to be worthy of the love he gives me. A few months ago, we had a family gathering. Tyler was there with his new girlfriend. Seeing them together produced a strange mix of emotions in me. On one hand, I felt a pang of jealousy that immediately embarrassed me. On the other hand, I felt relief and joy to see that he too had moved on with his life. During the gathering, there was a moment when Tyler and I were left alone in the kitchen. The silence was uncomfortable, loaded with unspoken words and memories that we both wanted to forget. "Sarah," Tyler finally said, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted to apologize for everything." I looked him in the eyes and saw in them the same regret that I felt. "There's nothing to apologize for, Tyler," I replied. "We both made a mistake. The important thing is that we learned from it." Tyler nodded slowly. "Are you happy?" he asked after a moment. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "And you?" A small smile appeared on his lips. I am too. At that moment, Jack entered the kitchen. He looked at both of us, and for a second, I felt my heart stop. But then he smiled, completely unaware of the history Tyler and I shared. What are you two hiding in here? Jack joked. Come on, Aunt Martha is about to cut the cake. We left the kitchen, the three of us together. And at that moment, I felt that a chapter of my life was definitively closing. Tyler and I had found a way to coexist, to be family without the past poisoning the present. That night, when Jack and I returned home, I felt overwhelmed by a wave of gratitude. As he prepared for bed, I stayed in the living room, looking at the photos from our wedding that hung on the wall. How could I have risked all of this? I asked myself. The answer I know now is that I was lost. I felt alone, abandoned. And instead of facing those feelings and talking to Jack, I looked for an easy way out. A way out that almost cost me everything I loved. Are you coming to bed? Jack's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I turned and saw him there, in the doorway of our bedroom, smiling at me with that smile that made me fall in love so many years ago. And at that moment, I felt my heart fill with a love so pure and strong that it almost hurt. Yes, I'm coming, I replied, returning the smile. That night, as I lay in bed next to Jack, listening to his calm breathing as he slept, I made a silent promise. I promised that I would never take our love for granted again. That I would fight every day to keep our relationship alive. That I would be honest, not only with Jack, but with myself. Several years have passed since that affair with Tyler, and although the memory still produces a twinge of shame, it no longer torments me as before. I've learned to live with it, to accept it as part of my story. A painful, but necessary lesson. Jack and I have grown together since then. We've learned to communicate better, to express our needs and frustrations in a constructive way. We've rediscovered the pleasure of small things. A shared coffee in the morning, a walk in the park, holding hands, a movie on the couch on a Sunday afternoon. I can't say our marriage is perfect. We still have disagreements. There are still difficult days. But now we face those challenges together, as a team. And every time we overcome an obstacle, our bond grows stronger. Sometimes when I look back, I wonder what would have happened if things had been different. What would have happened if the police hadn't interrupted that night? Would I have had the courage to end my affair with Tyler on my own? Or would we have continued until we were inevitably discovered, destroying our lives and those of those around us? I'll never know. And honestly, I prefer not to know. I prefer to focus on the present, on the love that Jack and I have rebuilt, on the life we are creating together. A few weeks ago, Jack surprised me with a proposal. He wants us to renew our wedding vows. At first, the idea scared me. How could I stand in front of our friends and family and promise fidelity when I had broken that promise in the past? But then I realized that was exactly why I should do it. Not to erase the past, but to reaffirm our commitment despite it. To prove, to ourselves and to the world, that our love is stronger than our mistakes. So I said yes. In a few months, Jack and I will stand in front of an altar and promise each other eternal love once again. And this time, when I say I do, I'll do it with a deeper understanding of what that commitment means. I'll do it knowing the value of what we have and how easy it is to lose it if we don't take care of it. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to tell Jack the whole truth about what happened with Tyler. Part of me thinks I should. That he deserves to know the whole truth. Another part fears that truth could destroy everything we've rebuilt. For now, I've decided to keep that secret. Not out of cowardice, but because I believe revealing it now would cause more harm than good. Maybe someday, when our relationship is even stronger, when we're even more secure in our love, I'll find the courage to confess everything. Meanwhile, I live each day trying to be the best version of myself. I try to be the wife Jack deserves, the woman I always wanted to be. And although the path isn't always easy, although sometimes the guilt still weighs on me, I know I'm going in the right direction. This is my story. A story of mistake and redemption, of betrayal and forgiveness, of loss and renewal. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's my story. And if sharing it can help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made, then it will have been worth telling. Because in the end, that's what we all are. A collection of stories. Some happy, others sad. This is my story. A story of mistake and redemption. Of betrayal and forgiveness. Of loss and renewal. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's my story. And if sharing it can help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made, then it will have been worth telling. Because in the end, that's what we all are. A collection of stories. Some happy, others sad. A woman who, despite everything, still believes in love. And if there's one lesson I'd like others to learn from my story, it's this. Love isn't something that just happens. It's something you choose every day. It's waking up every morning and deciding to love your partner, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts. It's being honest, even when the truth is uncomfortable. It's forgiving, not only others, but also yourself. Because in the end, that's what saves us. Our capacity to love, to forgive, to grow. And if my story can inspire someone else to fight for their love, to be honest with themselves and others, to forgive and seek forgiveness, then it will have been worth living and telling. This is my story. A story of love, betrayal, and redemption. A story that has taught me that even in our darkest moments, there's always hope. There's always a chance to start over, to be better, to love more deeply. And that, I believe, is the most valuable lesson of all. Tyler was there with his new girlfriend. Seeing them together produced a strange mix of emotions in me. On one hand, I felt a pang of jealousy that immediately embarrassed me. On the other hand, I felt relief and joy to see that he too had moved on with his life. During the gathering, there was a moment when Tyler and I were left alone in the kitchen. The silence was uncomfortable, loaded with unspoken words and memories that we both wanted to forget. "Sarah," Tyler finally said, his voice barely a whisper. I wanted to apologize. For everything." I looked him in the eyes and saw in them the same regret that I felt. "There's nothing to apologize for, Tyler," I replied. "We both made a mistake. The important thing is that we learned from it." Tyler nodded slowly. "Are you happy?" he asked after a moment. "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "And you?" A small smile appeared on his lips. "I am too." At that moment, Jack entered the kitchen. He looked at both of us, and for a second, I felt my heart stop. But then he smiled, completely unaware of the history Tyler and I shared. "What are you two hiding in here?" Jack joked. "Come on, Aunt Martha is about to cut the cake." We left the kitchen, the three of us together. And at that moment, I felt that a chapter of my life was definitively closing. Tyler and I had found a way to coexist, to be family without the past poisoning the present. That night, when Jack and I returned home, I felt overwhelmed by a wave of gratitude. As he prepared for bed, I stayed in the living room, looking at the photos from our wedding that hung on the wall. How could I have risked all of this? I asked myself. The answer I know now is that I was lost. I felt alone, abandoned. And instead of facing those feelings and talking to Jack, I looked for an easy way out. A way out that almost cost me everything I loved. "Are you coming to bed?" Jack's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I turned and saw him there, in the doorway of our bedroom, smiling at me with that smile that made me fall in love so many years ago. And at that moment, I felt my heart fill with a love so pure and strong that it almost hurt. "Yes, I'm coming," I replied, returning the smile. That night, as I lay in bed next to Jack, listening to his calm breathing as he slept, I made a silent promise. I promised that I would never take our love for granted again. That I would fight every day to keep our relationship alive. That I would be honest, not only with Jack, but with myself. Several years have passed since that affair with Tyler, and although the memory still produces a twinge of shame, it no longer torments me as before. I've learned to live with it, to accept it as part of my story. A painful, but necessary lesson. Jack and I have grown together since then. We've learned to communicate better, to express our needs and frustrations in a constructive way. We've rediscovered the pleasure of small things. A shared coffee in the morning, a walk in the park, holding hands. A movie on the couch on a Sunday afternoon. I can't say our marriage is perfect. We still have disagreements. There are still difficult days. But now we face those challenges together, as a team. And every time we overcome an obstacle, our bond grows stronger. Sometimes when I look back, I wonder what would have happened if things had been different. What would have happened if the police hadn't interrupted that night? Would I have had the courage to end my affair with Tyler on my own? Or would we have continued until we were inevitably discovered, destroying our lives and those of those around us? I'll never know. And honestly, I prefer not to know. I prefer to focus on the present, on the love that Jack and I have rebuilt, on the life we are creating together. A few weeks ago, Jack surprised me with a proposal. He wants us to renew our wedding vows. At first, the idea scared me. How could I stand in front of our friends and family and promise fidelity when I had broken that promise in the past? But then I realized that was exactly why I should do it. Not to erase the past, but to reaffirm our commitment despite it. To prove, to ourselves and to the world, that our love is stronger than our mistakes. So I said yes. In a few months, Jack and I will stand in front of an altar and promise each other eternal love once again. And this time, when I say I do, I'll do it with a deeper understanding of what that commitment means. I'll do it knowing the value of what we have and how easy it is to lose it if we don't take care of it. I don't know what the future holds for us. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to tell Jack the whole truth about what happened with Tyler. Part of me thinks I should. That he deserves to know the whole truth. Another part fears that truth could destroy everything we've rebuilt. For now, I've decided to keep that secret. Not out of cowardice, but because I believe revealing it now would cause more harm than good. Maybe someday, when our relationship is even stronger, when we're even more secure in our love, I'll find the courage to confess everything. Meanwhile, I live each day trying to be the best version of myself. I try to be the wife Jack deserves, the woman I always wanted to be. And although the path isn't always easy, although sometimes the guilt still weighs on me, I know I'm going in the right direction. This is my story. A story of mistake and redemption, of betrayal and forgiveness, of loss and renewal. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's my story. And if sharing it can help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made, then it will have been worth telling. Because in the end, that's what we all are. A collection of stories. Some happy, others sad. This is my story. A story of mistake and redemption, of betrayal and forgiveness, of loss and renewal. It's not a story I'm proud of, but it's my story. And if sharing it can help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made, then it will have been worth telling. Because in the end, that's what we all are. A collection of stories. Some happy, others sad. A woman who, despite everything, still believes in love. And if there's one lesson I'd like others to learn from my story, it's this. Love isn't something that just happens. It's something you choose every day. It's waking up every morning and deciding to love your partner, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts. It's being honest, even when the truth is uncomfortable. It's forgiving, not only others, but also yourself. Because in the end, that's what saves us. Our capacity to love, to forgive, to grow. And if my story can inspire someone else to fight for their love, to be honest with themselves and others, to forgive and seek forgiveness, then it will have been worth living and telling. This is my story. A story of love, betrayal, and redemption. A story that has taught me that even in our darkest moments, there's always hope. There's always a chance to start over, to be better, to love more deeply. And that, I believe, is the most valuable lesson of all.